Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So, David Cameron's done a deal and named the date. Not everyone's convinced. Even one of the Prime Minister's best cabinet buddies, Michael Gove, has decided to campaign on the Leave side. Both camps, those who want to stay in the EU and those who want to leave, have come out all guns blazing this morning. Let's hear what David Cameron had to say on the Mar Show a little earlier.
If we remain in a reformed EU, you know what you're going to get. You know how to do business. You know how to create jobs. You know how to continue with our economic recovery. If we leave, 7 years potentially of uncertainty, and at the end of that process you still can't be certain that our businesses will have full access to the market. So it could cost jobs, it could mean businesses, overseas businesses not investing in Britain. It would be a step into the dark, a real risk and uncertainty, and that's just the last thing we need in our country right now.
The Prime Minister there. Well, let's talk now to the BBC's political editor, Laura Kunsberg. And Laura, the tone and the language has changed. That was fighting talk from David Cameron yesterday. All the reports from you and others were about a convivial cabinet meeting, everyone friendly, honest, open. Now, of course, the gloves are off.
Indeed, but it was also described by Theresa Villiers, who's of course one of the ministers for Out, as being very emotional. And I think now today is the first time we're going to see those gut emotions really spilling out into the public domain. As you said, the Prime Minister has sort of moved into this very campaigning language, that fighting talk as you described it, because the stakes are so high for him. He knows fine well that he's taking a huge gamble with his own leadership. He's taking a huge gamble with the country's membership of the European Union, which he always said he might in the end argue to leave, but very few people around here actually believed that. But of course the other thing he's taking a gamble with is his own party unity, and that fighting talk that we've heard from him today on that is still in part a last-minute plea to those waverers to get on his side rather than going to the other. You know, this is something we're going to see play out perhaps very dramatically, this kind of blue-on-blue action. Cameron isn't going to stand up and debate directly with people who are opposing him, so he's doing that through another way. And one other thing that he said to our colleague Andrew Marr this morning was really quite strong and a bit sharp maybe. He suggested that those, including perhaps Boris Johnson, who wanted to campaign for Out, were linking arms with George Galloway and Nigel Farage. Now, for most people in the Conservative Party, that's hardly a compliment.
What about the waverers, as you have said? Boris Johnson, for example, I mean, he wasn't able to persuade with George Osborne Michael Gove, a very close friend of his, and that will have come as a blow. But how big a blow will it be if Boris Johnson does decide to campaign for Out?
Well, I think one of the things about this is people wonder, why do some people in the media seem to be so completely obsessed with one politician? And the reason is this: it's not very often that politicians have single name recognition. It's not very often, as if we do from time to time, you go out campaigning with politicians to see them in action. If you do that with Boris Johnson, people come out of their houses, they come out of their businesses, they come out of their shops, they want to see him, they want to talk to him, they want to have pictures taken with him. He is a rare politician, the kind who can actually add real fizz to a campaign and cut through to the public. Now, some people love him, of course, some people despise him, but the point is his addition into the Out campaign, if that's the way that he goes, which is absolutely what we expect, it would change the dynamics of the campaign, and particularly for the outside who haven't landed on one obvious leader, it would be a very significant fillip for them, a real shot in the arm. We are finally going to hear from Boris at 10 o'clock this evening. He's going to lay out his arguments in his regular paper column in the Telegraph, but the surprise would be if he decided to stay in. But of course, you never know with Boris Johnson. He's an unpredictable character, and instinctively, many people who know him well say actually at heart, he is a Europhile. He's not somebody who's naturally a sceptic.
Theatrical to the end, of course, as one would expect. Just briefly, though, how is it going to play out now between cabinet ministers on either side? Are they really going to be able to hold it together over the weeks of campaigning?
Well, one of the extraordinary things about this, of course, is that we have official division, an officially divided cabinet, and the normal way of politics working is that they have to stick together come hell or high water. I think most people are going to do their best to be polite, but I think friendships are going to be tested, loyalties are going to be tested, but clearly what it does mean is there's not very much going to be going on around here apart from this. All of the focus is going to be about Europe. The challenge for David Cameron, whatever the result, is whether or not he can keep the party together after the vote.
Laura Kunsberg, thank you. So, after a near sleepless night on Friday, European leaders were meant to agree a deal over a civilised English breakfast. No such luck. Brunch was mooted, then lunch. It's all about the meals. They didn't bother with afternoon tea. In the end, they came up trumps over dinner. Here's our Adam.
History starts with a lot of waiting around, as I discovered on Friday. At least it's not raining. Waiting for news from the EU summit, Westminster had ground to a halt. You sniffing out any news from Brussels? Over there, European leaders were on their second day of wrangling. The French president was worried about the City of London getting a special deal. The Polish Prime Minister feared her citizens living in the UK would lose their benefits. And the Greek PM was concerned about migrants. David Cameron said he was battling for a better deal for Britain, which involved lots of talk, quite a few croissants, but not a great deal of action. Suddenly back at Westminster, a thing happened. One of the Leave campaign's Grassroots Out held a rally where it was rumoured they would reveal a surprise supporter. Who would be like your dream Eurosceptic special guest?
Oh, for me, probably Douglas Carswell.
Sorry, it was actually George Galloway.
Comrades and friends.
When he turned up, a bunch of people left.
Anywhere near it. They don't want him anywhere.
It was all going so well.
Do you often have that effect?
No, they didn't.
It looks pretty busy to me.
About 50 people got up and left.
No, they didn't. They were waiting. There were people who waited for Nigel and had to get trains. Honestly.
Okay.
Clutching at straws.
Okay. The only thing more exciting was happening back in Brussels, where finally a deal designed to keep Britain in the EU was done over dinner. The hacks were briefed by a clearly knackered Prime Minister.
Good evening and welcome. Within the last hour, I've negotiated a deal to give the United Kingdom special status inside the European Union.
In the midst of it all, Angela Merkel was snapped going for some chips.
Thanks very much, thank you. Oh, they look delicious, thank you.
Which seemed like a jolly good idea.
That's what I call a working dinner.
Night all. Now it's Saturday morning in Downing Street. More waiting. This time for the first cabinet meeting on a weekend since the Falklands, and David Cameron's chance to brief his colleagues on that deal.
This is the deal, and here's what it amounts to. In a future EU treaty, the EU will exempt the UK from the idea of ever closer union. There's going to be safeguards for the City of London. When it comes to in-work benefits, the UK will be able to apply the emergency brake, which means EU migrants won't get the same level as the rest of us until they've been here for a few years. And from 2020, they'll only get child benefit paid at the rate they would get in their home country.
Time for ministers to give their verdicts.
Home Secretary, are you a Romanian? Are you a pair of outers? Chancellor, I'm guessing you're an inner, aren't you?
Each gave their answer during a 2-hour meeting in number 10. Then the PM appeared to press the button marked referendum.
The choice is in your hands, but my recommendation is clear. I believe that Britain will be safer, stronger, and better off in a reformed European Union.
And apparently it's now totally fine for members of the cabinet to totally disagree.
What was it like when Michael Gove spoke? Was he a bit sad?
Yeah, of course, because he and the Prime Minister, he and the rest of us, we all know each other. I think it's one of the really interesting and remarkable things about this government is that we all know each other and we like each other and we are friends. We have each other's mobile phones and we text and talk to each other.
Please join me in welcoming vote leaves.
But the 6 Tory ministerial outers headed straight to the HQ of the Vote Leave campaign.
It's Ian Duncan Smith. I'm a member of the Cabinet.
Free at last to point to the exit.
I will be voting to leave the EU because I am profoundly optimistic about the UK. I believe that we can flourish outside the European Union. So I think the better option is to take back control and restore the ability to make our own laws and control our own borders in this country.
Happy, happy, happy. Here we go. Big smiles.
Now the referendum campaign will be brought to a street near you, like the Britain Stronger in Europe team did in rainy Bath this weekend. There is one more thing we're waiting for. Which side will Boris Johnson join? The Mayor of London will reveal his intentions tonight.
Exciting. Let's pick up on that point. Tom Newton-Dunn, is he going to campaign to come out?
It looks very much like it, yes. The people very close to him this morning I've spoken to, some very pro-European MPs who were really hoping he was going to go their way, have now resigned themselves to Boris going for leave. And apparently it was all down to this great big dinner he had with Michael Gove on Tuesday night, as revealed by the Mail on Sunday this morning. And there it was that Boris was really given an argument he found very hard to refuse. And it would certainly appear they've done a deal to do this together.
Right. Isn't it more about leadership ambitions than it is about his true feelings to do with the EU?
Well, I think everybody now is going to presume that, not least because Boris Johnson is a known inner, throughout Westminster and really so throughout his career. He's an internationalist. He was born in New York. He spent time living in Brussels, but he's always been one for reform, but not one for leaving. And he was telling people privately, quite openly, only a month ago, he's going to campaign for in. So he's clearly worked out that the electorate that matters here for him, it would appear, are the grassroots Tories and the MPs who are sceptical and who will, therefore, hopefully, propel him towards being Prime Minister. But the flaw he's got is, does he look sincere in doing this? So he's going to have to make an extremely good argument, I think, tonight to make it sound credible why he has done this quite apparent volte-face.
Right. Well, I mean, that will be a boost for the Out campaign. Let's talk about some of the substance, though, Melanie Phillips, because there are people who say, actually, not that many people out in the voting public will look at the fine detail. They'll do it on gut instinct. They'll do it on emotion. Do you think that's true, or do you think there are salient issues that could capture the imagination?
I think the two are not necessarily in contradiction to each other. I think gut instinct and emotion are very much part of it, and fear will play a great deal to do with this, have a great deal to do with this campaign. The fear of, we must cling on to nurse for fear of something worse, which is what the Prime Minister has been and will continue to play on very significantly. But I was just very struck by this morning's interview with the Prime Minister, in which he addressed what for me is the most important issue, which is sovereignty, and he redefined it. He redefined it. He was so keen to slip away from it because it's so dangerous for him. The argument is that Britain will still have no control over its own laws, that the laws of this country will be dictated in significant measure, if not in great measure.
Although he said there would be a mechanism. He said they are looking at a mechanism to try and look at a way of making UK laws.
He is clinging to his apparent concession that he's wrung out of them not to sign up to ever closer union. That is a meaningless thing. The thing is that we in Britain will continue to be bound by the judgments of the European Court of Justice. And although the Prime Minister has floated some kind of constitutional settlement, this is a nonsense, because there is nothing that can override that superiority while we continue to be signed up to the EU.
But it's interesting that opponents of the European Union are very and understandably vexed that we appear not have the ability to make our own laws, but don't seem to be vexed that we appear not to have the ability to decide whether we go to war or not. You could have a situation in the next few months where Turkey and Syria could that Russia and Turkey could find themselves at war. What happens then? We are then bound to go to war on Turkey's behalf because Turkey is a member of NATO. And opponents of the European Union don't seem to be too vexed about that, but they are vexed about lawmaking. And that will be an argument that I think the Prime Minister will make.
Do you think security will be the overriding thing that will convince people?
Well, it's really simple who's going to win this campaign. The winners of this campaign will be the safest option and the losers will be the riskiest option. And that's why the Prime Minister, every other word is talking about risk, is talking about uncertainty, is saying, what can you, the outers, what is your vision for what Britain will be like outside the European Union?